Everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started with our community development meeting. Today's date is August 14th, 2025. The time is 10 a.m. In attendance are Commissioners Eberline and Matari, and on the telephone is Commissioner Duncan. I'm going to call this meeting to order. There are no chairman's opening remarks. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Poll for conflicts. Commissioner Eberline? Commissioner Duncan?
None.
None here. There's no public hearing, so we'll go right into our deliberations. The first item is CUP 24-0012, Old Dominion Freight Line, Inc. It's an action item, and I have Blake Zetter.
Good morning, Commissioners. Blake, planner with Community Development, here to present the conditional use permit for an above-ground storage tank of over 5,000 gallons of petroleum products. The subject site for the conditional use permit application is on the western portion of the county near state line. Specifically, it is a 20-acre lot, undeveloped currently, off Beck Road. As you can see in the photos, it still is undeveloped. The location of the storage tank is a little hard to orientate, but it will be here along the southern property line, which I'll further explain on the site plan in the next few slides. It should also be noted that this property is over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. The zone for the property is light industrial. It is also surrounded by several other light industrial and mining zones, some of which would have conditional zoning development agreements. In addition, there is a agriculturally zoned parcel to the northeast. For the specific project proposal, the primary purpose is for a 12,000 gallon above ground storage tank for specifically diesel fuel. This will be used in a broader context for a cross-dock warehouse facility. Specifically, the above ground storage will be used as a part of a refuel station for the trucks entering and exiting the site. The tank itself will be double walled with a maximum height of 11 feet above grade and installed on a raised concrete pad. The location will be along the southern property line, and it will be obscured from surrounding parcels by a site obscuring fence. As shown in the site map, the storage tank here is located along the southern property lines, close to the center, if you will. As you can see in the broader context, we have the cross-dock facility. And we'll be moving on to the public agencies. During the public agency comment, all agencies with jurisdiction approved. There is an asterisk next to Post Falls Highway District as they were requesting right-of-way dedication. We believe that this request is not appropriate for a conditional use permit, since a conditional use permit typically is an intermittent use and right-of-way dedication is a permanent dedication. So we thought that is more appropriate for time of subdivision in which new lots are being created. During the public comment period, we did only receive one comment, which was in opposition, which expressed concerns over potential environmental impacts. As I mentioned, this property is over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. As we believe these concerns have been mitigated from comments provided by PhD Critical Materials, who is one of the regulatory authorities over the storage tank. Their best management practices was developed in conjunction with DEQ and has been in existence since 2005. So we believe that there are plenty of mitigation actions taking place or will take place. Community Development believes that the applicant has met the required findings and that the CUP is recommended to be approved. This was brought before the hearing examiner on July 17th, who subsequently also recommended approval. And I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
None. like to have clean water, so it's already there. So what, is it all above ground?
Correct, above ground.
Or is it similar to the way the railroad uses it?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with how the railroad uses it.
They had big places where there was concrete that was, so nothing could get through it.
Oh, correct. So it is a double walled. So what ends up happening is the tank is actually encased in a secondary containment tank, both of which will be permitted from us and PhD. So there'll be engineered plans, a lot of mitigation measures to make sure that's properly installed.
And how many gallons is it?
This is 12,000 gallons.
Ask Commissioner Duncan.
Yeah, she didn't have any questions. I have a couple.
Okay, good.
I just want to confirm that on the pad, there's actually a concrete retaining wall that encapsulates the fluid in the tank if there is a leak. So it doesn't just run off the pad into the ground.
So the secondary containment field is actually outside the tank itself, so that will hold any leak from the tank. I do not believe that there is a secondary concrete structure outside of the tank itself.
I mean, I've seen that with other external tanks.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that underneath the tank is what, like a rubber barrier?
Essentially, it's two tanks in one. So
So
the,
it's just the tanks that we're talking about. There's no
Correct.
additional,
yeah, so the secondary containment field is surrounding the entire tank.
yeah. Okay.
I think typically they're on the ground with this one.
Director Callahan?
Commissioners, I have two thoughts. First of all, to Commissioner Everline's concern, this is vastly different in scale and magnitude from the BNS CUP, I believe you may be remembering. So this does not have that same degree of protection, but because it's on an order of magnitude of 100 times less in significance. Setting that aside, since PhD thinks this is, as it's proposed, safe, that's a reasonable starting point. But since it is a CUP, if you think there should be additional containment, that double wall concrete barrier, like you have seen in other areas, is a condition you could impose.
If I may add, the double walled containment is actually one of the best management practices recommended construction, as outlined in there.
But that's for the tank itself, which is above ground, will have two an inner tank and an outer tank, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
But to your point, you could have a concrete barrier underneath that catches it too.
Yes.
And PhD is fine with that sort of thing, as I understand it.
Like a drip pan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Do you know what the standard is for something like that as far as the height? Because if it's too high, it becomes cumbersome to get in there. If it's too low, and that's assuming there's a catastrophic failure.
I don't know the specific height. I believe the examples that I have seen have been close to 4 to 5 feet in height.
And we could certainly work that through with PhD's help.
Yeah.
How much, what you said, how?
Chairman, sorry.
Yes.
Just wanted to point out under 1.01 of the hearing examiner recommendation, we're entitled proposal, it does say that the proposed storage tank will be double walled with a maximum height of about 11 feet above grade and installed on a raised concrete pad. So,
Yeah, I'm not-
no, I don't know.
My
I don't
question.
know what the concrete pad looks like, but
Well, that's part of the questioning. Is it sounds like the pad is just a flat pad with nothing around the edges to catch fluid from running off if it were to develop a leak.
right. Yeah, and that's definitely a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
Ben Tarbutton, Community Development. So looking at the applicant's narrative, they do describe this 20 by 20 concrete pad that's going to be below the reservoir or the storage tank. It says that, Okay, so the proposed concrete pad over which all vehicle filling operations will occur include a central drain basin which drains to a 1,000-gallon oil water separator with shutoff valves at both inlet and outlet. The dispensing area is covered by a canopy designed for the purpose, and the 20 by 20 concrete pad is sloped to the central drain basin. So it
It
is
is covered.
taking into consideration how actually water or any spillage would be captured.
And what about when they're filling up the vehicles? And the reason I ask these questions is because diesel has a habit of just getting everywhere. It leaks through the nozzles and stuff like that. It drips everywhere. You go to the gas station, you'll see big stains with diesel more so than you'll see with the gas. And so I just ask, what about a pad where they're actually fueling? Have they talked about something like that, or is it just going to be on the ground where whatever runs out of the tank or leaks from the hose itself will just drip onto the ground?
I think what the narrative says is that the filling operations will be done over this pad. So they'll have the actual fueling done in that location, so any spillage that occurs while refueling will be captured under that 20 by 20 pad.
Okay. Well,
How tall is it? The pad?
I don't know that,
And is
I
it
don't know that it says the height of the pad. I think it's just sloped in such a way when they create the concrete pad that they're going to slope it to a drain, to an oil water separator.
And then it goes to a 200-gallon retention area, is that correct?
Correct.
And concrete has a habit of cracking. And so how are you going to deal with that?
There are,
It's membrane lined, isn't it?
for the best management practices, PhD does do routine inspections of this site.
Didn't it say it was membrane lined?
what about a rubber barrier underneath the concrete?
That's what we're checking. I thought he just read that it was membrane lined, but maybe I'm remembering wrong.
And the other reason I ask is because you made the comment that a CUP is typically for intermittent use, but I don't see how this would be an intermittent use tank. It looks like it's going to be a fully operational tank.
By that, I mean,
I can help with that. I think the point we're trying to make is the CUP is the inappropriate time to ask for right-of-way.
Okay,
You should only get right-of-way through a subdivision.
that's fine, but
But intermittent, it's not, I'll agree. Think of this as a regularly permanent facility.
that's what I was really getting at, was there's a use of terms here that
Yes, sir.
kind of contradict.
Agreed.
Okay,
I think to Blake's point, CUPs come and go.
yes, yes. Even though we've had some that have been around
That
for,
have been around for decades.
yeah. Good. Commissioner Eberlein?
Concrete has a nasty way of leaking things out. It cracks, it breaks. And so that would cause a problem, and you wouldn't be able to stop it. You'd have to take the whole thing out. And so probably a better idea would be to use a steel tank and surround the concrete just as a barrier, similar to what they did up at the railroad. Because the aquifer is a very, very important thing in this area. And so we need to make it absolutely foolproof as we possibly can. And I'm skeptical about having a big steel tank and then having concrete, and that's going to be the way you contain it. Because cracks happen in concrete, and I know you know that. Everybody knows that. Every building contractor, any person trying to put flagstones on their walks. And
What do you think about a rubber barrier under the concrete
well,
as an added?
you could do that, but rubber also deteriorates.
Mm-hmm.
And so how are we going to keep things from deteriorating?
Commissioners, if you might entertain the idea, we could have a new condition that allows staff to work with PhD to come up with an appropriate additional barrier that makes this fail-safe. Would that be acceptable?
Nothing is fail-safe.
We can come pretty close.
Yes.
This sort of
But
thing's
it's-
been around for
But
40
for,
years.
for something like that, it's way better than what's being proposed right now. I do not.
I'm confident, having worked with PhD staff for some considerable time, they know that, and they would have some ideas if we need to do anything else. But an open-ended condition where we could work with them would help us make that possible.
I mean, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but we want to be sure to make it right.
Yes, sir.
How would we proceed with something like that, Pat? Would that just be a motion that includes that language, or what?
Yeah, in the motion, you would just, say, with an additional condition that staff is to work with Panhandle Health to, come up with the best containment solution.
Well, in this case, it would be an additional containment solution.
Best additional containment, additional containment solution.
Like triple walls.
However you want to word it, but you just, have the motion to add that as an additional condition.
Okay.
Multiple barriers.
Does that work for you, Commissioner Eberlein?
It can. I want to see what's going on out there.
Is there something that we can do to at least keep Commissioner Eberlein informed on this before the final issuing of that occurs?
We could actually bring back the whatever we work out with PhD for your review.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, if you bring it back, then do you need a motion?
Well, I think what I'm trying to get at is a motion to approve so that we can go forward and the applicant knows this is done, but we'll work up something that meets your desires and bring it back to you. And
Okay.
I'm confident we can do that in a way that you'll be satisfied.
So we'll work
So
up.
you wouldn't have to redo a hearing.
All right. So we would add a condition, in essence, that would be acceptable. Yep.
I'll go along with that.
All right. Commissioner Duncan, are you good with that?
Well, I think it's belt and suspenders. I am comfortable with the best practice that is put forward and with Panhandle Health District, who will make visits every other year to these types of uses over the aquifer. So I think to include additional things above best practice, I think is just going to be government intrusion on these people's business. So that's just my thoughts, but you guys can do what you want.
Well, I can appreciate that, and I think there's always some situational conditions, and in this one, it's over the aquifer. We're continuing to grow, and a little extra insurance, I think, in the end, doesn't hurt in the long run. For something as potentially toxic. And when we saw what happened over on Airway Heights when we had some, fire retardant liquid get into the groundwater, and what a nightmare that was for people. And so I understand the government intrusion side, but I would argue that when something bad happens, it affects a lot of other people, and there's a lot more intrusion.
There's many times when you can find, it's very easy to find where disasters happen because of something that wasn't done properly.
Yeah.
And that's from coast to coast.
Well, I'll take a stab at the motion here. I move that we approve CUP 24-0012 Old Dominion Freight Line, Inc., with the additional condition that staff work with Panhandle Health to develop an additional containment solution using best industry standards, and we'll bring that back to the board for final approval.
That works.
Agreed.
Commissioner Eberlein?
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan?
try only to make sure that this process moves forward.
Chair Matari.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next up is item 2, MSP 24-0001, Clagstone Country Estates. It's an action item, and I have Vlad Finkel, but I don't think he'll be talking today.
No, Vlad has the day off, so it's going to be me today. So, good morning, Commissioners. Ben Tarbutton, Community Development for the record. Today before you is deliberations for MSP 24-0001 for Clagstone Country Estates. Just a general overview of the project. It's a 58 residential lot subdivision over 2 different phases. There's going to be 2 open space tracts, a utility tract, and a tract used for bus stations and mailboxes. The total acreage of the site is roughly 399 acres. The main access is from a public road, Clagstone Road, that is under the maintenance jurisdiction of Lakes Highway District. The applicant is proposing to conduct or construct a public water system to serve the residential lots. However, they also want to reserve as a contingency plan to have individual wells for each of the lots there too. But they do intend to work with DEQ on developing that public water system. They also are planning on doing individual septic systems, and PHT has looked at that as well. So the project site is between Spirit Lake and Athol, right up on the border of Bonner County. Again, the access comes here off of Clagstone Road. Here's just kind of an overview. You can see that the project site is relatively flat and fairly well treed. The zoning is rural, and the comprehensive plan designation for this parcel is country. Here's kind of just a general overlay of the plat and how that would look with the general area. Again, as I mentioned, a couple of photos of the site show that it's fairly well treed and pretty flat there. Agency review, most of the agencies did not have any concerns. They've approved it with their conditions. Lakes Highway District did require that they enter into a road development agreement, as the interior roads will be dedicated to Lakes Highway District. So they are planning on building those to the public road standard. Again, Health District didn't have any concerns. They will have individual septics for each of the lots. The Fire District's approved. The county sheriff did raise some concerns, as they do typically with these major subdivisions, just kind of explaining how they feel that there is some stress being pressed on the level of services as residential development occur. We have discussed this issue with the board a number of times, and currently the state does not permit any impact fees to be used for salaries for additional sheriff. And the county is in the process of working on comprehensive plan that will address this issue in the future. And the commissioners, of course, would have an opportunity to weigh in on that at that time too. Other than that, again, the applicant is proposing to work with DEQ on the public water system. However, should that not work out for whatever reason, then they will move forward with individual wells. During the public comment period, there was 1 comment in support and 3 in opposition. The comments in opposition were revolving around traffic, groundwater concerns, and the impacts that it has on schools and sheriff and fire. Staff believes that the agencies have had the opportunity to review the request, and all of the agencies are on board. The applicant is going to be constructing any shared infrastructure and will do so at time of recordation or will bond for those improvements as required by code. And the staff does also believe that it's is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The project came before the hearing examiner on July 17th and also recommended approval of the project. And I would stand for any questions, should you have any.
Thank you. Questions?
Another piece of America's gone.
Commissioner Duncan, do you have any questions?
I do not.
I'm just kind of curious about the water a little bit and their approach. They're initially talking about having a community well, I guess, or 2 community wells, and then distributing that water among the different homes, or can you elaborate?
Water system fed by 2 wells. And so they would have a reservoir that would be held to supply the development. That's the plan.
And how does that compare as far as being able to monitor water, not only for there, but the surrounding areas, compared to individual wells in all these different homes? Because water obviously is a scarce resource, and not having a good handle on what's happening with water, I think, is to our detriment as a community.
Well, you know, if I could for a moment, I failed to mention the project site is located over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer.
Yes.
And as part of their analysis, because they do have this contingency plan for individual wells on each site, they did have a hydrogeological analysis to address the water and the availability of water. Based on the area well logs, there is, it far exceeds the minimum necessary for each dwelling site.
Yeah.
So the geologist did not raise any concerns with the availability of water.
Yeah, I understand. I guess my point is that we, it's like the old saying, death by 1,000 cuts. You know, each individual one doesn't seem that bad. I imagine the well reports are when they were initially drilled and not monitored over time. And so, you know, at some point we hit a critical mass. And at that point, the question is it too late? You know, how can we know sooner than later whether we're going to have a water problem? Because I've talked with people in other parts of the country, and there was water in those places until there wasn't water. And so that's part of the reason I'm asking, because this is a large development. And so it's not going to be just another home that we approve with another little straw on the ground. It's going to be, you know, 50-some units plus.
You know, as far as different monitoring, there are, of course, cities that get their water source from the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. I'm not aware personally, David, maybe you might be, about any cities sharing any concerns with their level of production from the aquifer. And if cities aren't raising that concern, showing a depletion of their water source, I don't know that something like this that only provides service to 58 residential lots would be concerning either.
Well, it's not that it's a concern. It's that again, it's the death by 1,000 cuts. You know, we could do this. We could do 50 units 100 times over. We could do 5 units 1,000 times over. It doesn't matter. At some point you hit there. And so how do we know when to say when, in essence, is my question geared towards.
Commissioners, if I may, springboarding off of what Ben Tarbutton said, you raise a policy issue, which is exactly why we're updating the comprehensive plan this next year. This is the kind of thing needs to be discussed with the community. We need to come up with policy that the community and you agree makes good practical sense for the next 20 years and encompasses all of the things you just brought up. But unless and until we get to that broad level of policy, we don't have an answer for you right now. But we also don't have a rational basis to say no at the moment, because all the indicators, as Mr. Tarbutton just said, indicate that we have an ample supply for now.
Yeah. And I understand that, and that makes perfect sense. And I agree with that assessment. I mean, part of these questions are a little bit rhetorical in the sense that how do we get there to figure this stuff out? And the other part is just the difference between a community-oriented water system versus individual wells, and how that allows for at least better monitoring to know what's going on.
At least the community system aggregates these things in a way that's easier to monitor.
Yeah. So, and what, just out of curiosity, what would lead to the community system not being a viable option if they claim that that is where they want to go first?
I think, I don't know for sure. I think this is something that the applicant could certainly address, but I think it has to do with timing and just the cost involved of the infrastructure for the system. Again, my understanding is that it is a fairly lengthy review and approval process with DEQ. And should the applicant desire to start selling some of these lots without that system yet being reviewed and approved and constructed, that kind of puts them on hold until they do so.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea is, and they have maybe mentioned as much in their application, that phase 2, if they continue to proceed with the public drinking water system, phase 2 may be served by that water system if it is approved at that time, and it may then go kind of retroactively and provide service to the remaining lots in phase 1 that haven't yet been developed.
Yeah, I understand. And I'm not trying to filibuster or take up time here, but one of the challenges for the board, at least me personally, is the fact that there's a something for something. These applicants say they want to do something a certain way, which induces us to say yes, and then afterwards, there's nothing binding them to do what they say that they were going to do to induce us. And that's part of the reason I'm asking these questions, because it seems like a community-oriented water system would be a better way to go, maybe even moving forward with these larger developments. And I'd like to see that happen. And so that's why, unless, the board thinks differently.
Well, I think that the community system is the proper way to do it, so you're just dipping 2 straws into the ground. And I don't think the aquifer at this point in time has any ramifications with this.
Yeah,
I
agree with
it's
you.
a big old river out there,
it is.
and, we get our water before Spokane does.
I maybe would add that regardless of whether or not there are 2 straws or 58 straws, they're going to be pulling the same amount of water.
Yes.
Yeah, no one disputes that. It's just, again, the monitoring mechanisms in place. The ability to do this with eyes open or blind.
I think the community system would be safer because it can be monitored more easily rather than a bunch of haphazard things, wells that everybody puts in, that have breaks and so on and so forth. And then I think the community system is the best way to go.
Is that something that we could make as the condition?
Probably a little late.
Yes, you could.
Well,
Pat, what do you think?
he just said yes.
Okay. Well, if Pat's there, I'm there.
Okay.
And if I may, I think in the future we could put developers on notice that the preference is.
Sure. Commissioner Duncan?
So the only concern that comes to my mind is just the way you guys were talking about monitoring individual wells. Like you couldn't monitor individual wells, and so therefore you want a public system. So I just want to make sure that, from my perspective, I'm not interested in more government intrusion on people's lives. So I think, I'm on my water system board. I've been there, 10, 15 years or something now. So I think from a health and safety aspect, yeah, it's good to have a water system, but from preventing somebody from this development because they have to have individual wells, I'm not supportive of.
Well, I understand. And, I think it just comes down to, again, where, at what point do we say when? And, other communities who had water underground who have water problems today as a result of their growth. You know, what do we do for those people whose wells are long established and now they're drying up because of all the growth? And, you know, I
I
don't,
would argue that the aquifer is the key here. So I don't know what other jurisdictions you're talking about, but again, there's no scientific evidence that the aquifer is in danger at this point, and 58 homes really is a very low usage compared to 400 or 1,000 homes that, you know, Coeur d'Alene is looking to approve here soon, or, you know, 1,200 homes in Hayden. So, you know, at this point, I'm really not wanting to put a condition that says they have to do that. A preference, absolutely. I would prefer that they do have a water system, but to say the approval rests on that, then that I'm uncomfortable with that.
well, how could we do that so that the first option of the community water system was legitimately exhausted, as opposed to putting it as window dressing as an option that gives it, that would induce us to say yes?
Is that a question for Pat or for me?
For you, Commissioner Duncan.
I think that's a question for Pat, really. It sounds like that if the process with DEQ is untimely, then they would want to go to individual wells. But if DEQ is able to get approvals in a timely manner, then that's what I heard anyway.
Pat, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of tracking with Commissioner Duncan's last comment. I think, you know, a timely manner should be defined a little more specifically, though, if you're going to go that route, you know, or, you know, if it's, you know, proven to be infeasible within a certain number of months, you know, after approval, then they could go to individual wells. Or if, you know, DEQ takes more than, say, you know, and staff would have to help me with this as far as what their typical approval timeline is. You know, if it takes more than 6 months or 9 months or a year or whatever that time frame is, then they could do individual wells.
I think that's appropriate, because you're not gonna take a whole system up there. That's a big patch of ground. And so, you know, maybe the first leg of it is regular wells, and then after that, community system.
So up to a certain number are wells, and then after that? I mean, we're looking at what, 50, how many?
58 lots.
58?
It's gonna take a long time to develop, though. Well, maybe not a long time, but it might take 2, 3, 4, 5 years before that's ever built out. And so,
I'm just thinking of a condition. You might add something along the lines of individual, not more than, pick a number of individual wells will be allowed for this process, for this plat, if the public system review by DEQ exceeds 12 months, or pick a number, in the permitting process.
It just has to be a reasonable amount. I don't know what that would be. So if you tell me 12 months is more than enough time,
You have any idea?
ask the developer.
Review, I don't know. I mean, it's probably at least that, I would say. And there are times where we've heard public water systems going over a year. So I don't know that even 12 months is enough time for the process.
well, I mean, this isn't going to happen overnight as it is. I mean, we're in the very beginning stages, right?
Yes, I do know that they are working with DEQ currently on the process.
Okay.
That is fully their intent to go that direction. They just can't guarantee that the future, for whatever reason.
No one guarantees. It's just a reasonable amount of time that says, you know, DEQ is just, they've they've dragged their feet too long, and now it's time to free the developer to go in a more efficient pathway.
I think 12 months is more than reasonable. I mean, if nothing else, that puts the onus on DEQ to get their act together and get this approved or not.
Then there's the aspect of upturns and downturns from the economy, and whether they're gonna have a build-out time, and what's that, because that could stretch out for 10 years, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
You need to keep that. I'd kind of like to speak from you.
I'm happy to address the commissioners
If you want to, you have to just come up. No,
It's a
no, sorry.
deliberation, so we're not
Sorry.
supposed to have outside communications.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
This is a level of detail that we really
No,
should have worked out.
it's not a
before-
hearing.
Before that we got here.
Well, if you tell me a year is a reasonable amount of time for this, then a
Practical.
year it is. Obviously the market can change on these things all the time. The market is not as hot as it was. It's still kind of holding up from what I've heard.
I would say 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years to work with DEQ.
Yeah. And maybe even more, because that's a pretty good sized development. There's a lot of stuff up there that's going on, the economy. It could hinder the developer's ability to make it a feasible project.
Well, I think it's giving DEQ time to respond, not time for it to get built out. So, we would just say, how much time do we want to give DEQ? And if DEQ comes back with a plan and the builder decides not to build because of market conditions, DEQ has set that up, so that's their condition moving forward into the future. Am I correct on that?
Yes, sir.
So,
Director
maybe just
Callahan?
going back to the condition.
real quick, Commissioner Eberlein had a question.
What time frame do you think would be adequate?
I think 12 months is enough for DEQ to get off the dime, if you'll pardon the old Southern expression. And I believe that's Commissioner Matari's concern, is we ought to have a safeguard so that we don't automatically start drilling individual wells, but we want to encourage DEQ to move along. Is that fair?
Yes.
I think that's too short of a time frame.
Well, I think you may be flipping it around backwards. We're inducing DEQ to move.
That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Right, because I could see 3 years.
Well, in that case, that's what would allow them to use individual wells.
Yes. That's what I said.
And you don't want that to happen?
Individual cell, what are you talking about? Individual wells versus DEQ with the.
For the two
Water system.
public water system, yes, sir.
Because if the applicant is working with DEQ on this public water system, and for some reason, if it doesn't happen.
Within a year.
Within a year or at all, then the applicant still would like to have the opportunity to serve each of those lots with individual wells.
So it seems to me all we're trying to do is narrow the scope of how long they get to pursue the public well system. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We're just giving the state and the developer an opportunity to at least exhaust this, so that the state doesn't drag their feet, and that the developer can't just start, drilling for wells right off the bat and say, well, we changed our mind right after we got the approval, without exhausting that option, the preference.
And did you want to give them any, some number? I'm just pulling a number out of the air, but maybe 10 lots they could do while they're waiting for DEQ?
Are they looking at developing lots?
No, I'm sorry, I'm not involved in that level
Yeah.
of detail. I'm just trying to negotiate something that helps.
I'm
them
just
feel
trying to keep it
comfortable.
simple you know, not get into this and that and that and this and.
Fair.
So that I'm understanding this, is the commissioner's opinion is that individual wells are not an option? Because if they work with DEQ and go through the application process, and for whatever reason they decide to kind of abandon that idea, and the public water system is not installed, or they're not planning on pursuing it, would that be contrary to this approval?
Well, where I'm standing, no. Okay. What I'm trying to address is the issue of inducement. And part of the inducement is to have this public water system, right? But there's nothing binding to that.
Right.
Okay. It sounds great. This nice public water system. We say yes. After we sign the documents, the following day they change their mind and decide to start doing wells. Okay. Well, if that's the case, what's the point of telling us that there is going to be a public water system? So ideally, it would be nice to have the public water system and move in that direction in the future, right? Not to hamper people, not to cause grief or anything. But if you're going to say you're going to do it, then what is there to bind you to say, I've really exhausted all these options, and now, you know, we have to go to the wells? That's the whole point, is that
I have a question.
Sure.
Ben, can you tell me what page in the packet that exhibit PA1 is?
He's looking.
Sorry.
But does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the sort of thing we'll try to work for in the future before we get to this point, so that you don't have these questions.
We just got done with a whole zoning issue that said, I just want to do this, but I get to do all these other things.
Yes,
And,
sir.
you know, there's nothing,
Commissioner Duncan, are you referencing PA01, the agency letter? Is that what you're asking about?
It's condition 7.06 references exhibit PA01 or PA-1.
Oh, okay, let's see, let me get there. Okay, so the applicant.
I think I found it at page 190.
Department of Environmental Quality for a Public Drinking Water System, that is.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure there wasn't anything unusual. So I would just maybe want to add to that condition that, you know, that they do earnestly seek that approval, and if they cannot get approval within 12 months or a reasonable time that DEQ normally does this, then they would be permitted to seek individual wells.
yeah, 12 months, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to make a motion amending condition 7.06.
Nick, and they're already working with the department, DEQ, the developer, that is.
Correct.
And so this would just basically adding a stipulation of 12 months more for DEQ to get this kind of finalized for the developer. And if DEQ provides that final setup for this public water system, that is what it will be. But if DEQ lasts longer than 12 months to get an answer, then the developer has the option to install wells for lots that they want to sell.
I'll go along with that.
Okay. You want to make the motion, Commissioner Duncan?
Well, sure, but I'm not sure how many words I'm going to need to
Well, here,
put all that into place, but I'll try.
I'll take a stab at it if you want. It's up to you.
Go ahead.
I move that we approve MSP 24-0001 Clagstone Country Estates with the condition that DEQ is allowed 12 months after approval to provide a public water system to the applicant for the development, and if not, the applicant will have the ability to install wells on that project.
Second.
Commissioner Eberline,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye, but just want to make clarification that DEQ is not providing the water system. They're just approving it. Just want to make sure that it's
Yes.
fine.
Chair,
Aye.
Chair Matari.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Probably a little longer than we expected, but thank you.
Okay. I think you ended up with a better result.
All right, next up is first business item, number 3, Hayden Lake Parcel Update Authorization to Assess Valuation. It's an action item. Director Callahan?
Thank you, Commissioners. Ben, if you wouldn't mind searching in the electronic file, there's a image that I'd like the Commissioners to be able to see. I believe you'll recall this is an item that Deputy Director Davison brought up a few months back because we had a shooting and all of that. Well, we did a little research on the parcel, and it turns out that it is eligible for building permits. I contacted the Highway District Super, and he agreed that he could grant access to it. So it's a buildable lot that the county owns, and that Director Snyder says he can't use for Parks and Waterways. And so I just wanted to bring to your attention that from what I've seen, parcels of this size and location are generally worth $500,000 to $1 million on the open market. And given our recent budgeting efforts and knowing how that went, I thought it might be used. There it is on the screen. All of those black lines indicate the old original plat, but we could easily consolidate all of that into one parcel. And so it's got a great location. It's got decent access off a public road. It's worth real money. We just thought you might be interested in having us use our contract money for consultants, to use an appraiser to determine the, yes, sir. That the other.
Sorry, I didn't see that. This is just an image of the buildable lot.
Yeah, that's.
Buildable area.
Should be.
It's in an email.
Oh, it's in an email. Try that one, Ben, and see.
No, the other one. But at least it just kind of articulates where the buildable area is.
Yeah, the two parts of this to remember is there are electrical lines running right through the middle of it, so it has a fairly shallow area to build, about 5,000 to 7,000 square feet. But that's kind of why we thought it'd be useful to actually hire an appraiser. It could come out of our consultant money. It's usually less than $2,000 for an appraisal for this sort of thing. In that way, if you're comfortable with it, we could find a listing officer and get it on the open market and see if we can get something that would help this 26 budget.
Thoughts on that?
I agree. I think that's a good idea, but I don't think we get it on the open market. I think we have to do like a request for sealed bids or something, Pat. Is that what you remember?
Yeah, we would want to sell it at public auction and sell it to the highest bidder.
Fair. But at least we would know a value range if we had our own appraisal.
Which, yeah,
Right. Yeah, I
important.
agree with the appraisal.
Okay. Commissioner Eberline?
Yes.
So is
And then the appraised value would be the minimum bid.
Is the public using any of that property at this point in time?
Illegally. It's a party. There was a shooting up there. It's basically people are trespassing on it.
And Snyder is okay with it?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's fine.
Okay.
We'll proceed that way.
You have direction.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, item 4, Responsible Contractors Code Amendment, and Director Callahan.
Commissioners, you may recall, again, a conversation we had not too long ago about trying to get builders and contractors to do the right thing. And we talked about fines, and you weren't comfortable with that. And so our legal counsel actually came up with what I thought was a novel idea. It's on the screen. But before we go any further with it, I wanted to visit with you. And it would essentially be a code amendment in both the building code and the land use and development code to allow us to get in front of, rather than behind of, this issue. So that with some of the, I'll dare say, only a handful of contractors we deal with that create this problem for us, once we have a known listed problem of reoccurring issues, we could, as Pat has described in here, list them as people that we're not going to actually do business with, meaning we wouldn't issue building permits. So what Pat's laid out in draft form is this concept that if they meet certain thresholds, we'll refrain from issuing building permits and put them on notice for that. But again, this is a draft idea. I wanted to just get in front of you for discussion. If you have not had a chance to read through this, it would be useful, and maybe we could come back to have more dialogue. But I wanted to get your input before we even go to the Planning Commission or go any further with this idea.
Thoughts?
I like it.
Commissioner Eberline?
I'm hesitant.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
Would this apply to businesses or just people? And the reason I ask is because you could ban a business because the guy got rid of that LLC and started a new one.
I'll defer to Pat on how we would actually deal with that. But off the top of my head, the idea would be to capture all, both individuals and businesses.
Okay.
Because we deal with both.
Yeah, and yeah, I concur with that. That was my intent as well.
Okay. And so that would there would be a mechanism to avoid people just shutting down a bad business and starting a new one.
LLC to another.
Okay.
Right.
And the other is what mechanisms are in place to prevent abuse by the county? I mean, not to suggest that the people in this room or anyone else in the county today, but fast forward into the future and we have a director who says, I don't like you. And I'm going to make your life miserable because I just don't like your business. What mechanism is in place to protect from that happening?
There are provisions in here that list out the kinds of things that warrant our designating these people to meet this threshold. So that's the starting point. And Pat will have to jump in just since he's the one.
Yeah,
that
there's also and any determination can be appealed to the county commissioners as well.
Oh, that's a good point.
Okay, so there is an appeal process.
Yes,
Yeah, we shall.
absolutely.
The debarment shall be mailed to the contractor, and then it's appealable.
And what happens if I sign up, let's say I'm a homeowner, I have a contractor that's approved by the county. I decide I don't want to use that contractor, but I've already got my permit issued. And now I bring in one of these blackballed contractors, if you will, to complete my permit. Is there a mechanism in place for that?
Not that I know of, but that's why we're in draft form. And you bring up a good consideration. If we were to go forward with this, that's the level of detail we
Yeah,
work through.
Yeah, in all honesty, Bruce, I'd probably have to add some language to address that particular situation. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, I'm just asking. It's the cheapest time. The idea is to take an idea and then figure out how to break it before we implement it.
Right.
And then learn the hard
yeah.
way.
No, I appreciate that.
Commissioner Eberlein, what are your thoughts? Because you've got some reluctance and.
I remember a certain project.
Is this mic on?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
A certain project up on Hayden Lake, and there was a rock wall, a concrete wall that fell down twice. And that was very shoddy craftsmanship. There was another one that was above Fernan Lake, and it had the owners of the property had a right to, say, hey, this is the contractor we're going to use, and the contractor didn't do what he had to do to make the house livable. So there was water running all around the backside of the concrete and everything else. It was a mess, and they couldn't even live in it. However, in the United States of America, usually we like to have, personal freedoms and so on and so forth. And I'm very skeptical about this, because that kind of, yes, there's advantages to it, but nevertheless, I think it's quite intrusive.
Intrusive to the contractor,
Well, inclusive across the board.
in the sense that, like, the homeowner, we would be affecting the homeowner's choice of who they want to work with.
Well, it's actually, I would consider it to be up to the homeowner to sort out who they're going to use.
Yeah.
And if somebody's disbarred, they would lose that ability.
Well, I guess the question is, what would constitute saying we don't want that person to cause more harm into this community? I mean, I know one issue that I'm talking with Craig about, where we had a contractor who did the foundation walls, I think, wrong, and they all had to be pulled out. And so how does the next homeowner know about?
They don't.
Yeah.
There's gobs and gobs and gobs of developments that are out there. I remember one specifically where a lady out in a certain subdivision had her son is a building inspector, for the realtors.
Mm-hmm.
And so on the outside of the wall, they put wafer wood up. Bingo. So then they came in, and then they put insulation inside, then they put plastic inside of it, and then the mold they had to tear the whole bloody thing down because it was full of mold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those were good contractors.
Mm-hmm.
And there's other ones over there where they throw their garbage into the pipes to go run things out with your heating and HVAC and all that. The only reason that lady found out about that mold is because her son found the mold. Otherwise, because they were ready to put sheetrock on the wall. That is shoddy craftsmanship.
But that would mean the contractor was bad, though, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And so I think that's the point, is to keep those contractors from operating, at least in this county.
But these were big building contractors.
Yeah.
And they were very
Can I
well
ask a
known.
clarifying question?
Sure.
So when we're talking about this, my first impression was that it would be helpful for the county to know, and citizens, about people who qualify for this. But that does not prevent somebody who does not qualify for this from still doing business with community development. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so. Pat, did you think otherwise?
Well, the way it's drafted, they wouldn't be able to do business with community development, but we could certainly change it to just a notice thing, if that's the direction the board wants to go down.
Yeah, I thought
My concern is we get false allegations sometimes, and so I just would be concerned about some people who might fall into that crack, hopefully no one. And then, what if it's a partnership, right? So you have two people in the LLC. One is really the bad actor. The second one wants to go off on his own and is responsible but doesn't qualify for this because of their original LLC. I don't think they should be prevented from doing business in the county. I don't know, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, well, to be honest, this would be a fairly, draconian remedy. That would only be applied to the worst of the worst, and and it would have to be based on objective evidence, not just accusations from a homeowner. And also, there's the appeal process, to help guard against, false or misleading allegations, or the partner who wants to go off on his own and is in fact responsible. We could either make a finding of responsibility as to that person, or if the business is the business that he was involved in was debarred or suspended, then he could seek to reverse that debarment as to him or her. So there's a few different processes in here that would help guard against it. But again, if the board wanted to make it simply a notice thing, we could certainly do that, or we could actually give the director the ability to, at least in the initial instance, to prevent them from doing business with the county for at least for a certain amount of time.
Well, Commissioner Duncan brings up a good point. If you have two people in an LLC, one's the rotten apple, the other's a good person, you don't want to penalize the good person. So I think
Right.
the process is really what's most important here, not the stick,
Sure.
if you will. Meaning,
Sure.
what kind of process does a partnership have to go through? Because if they're on their fifth reprimand, if you will, right, then I would argue that both of them are rotten apples. If you're on your second or third reprimand, usually the second or third should be the one where that one guy says, I don't want to be in business with you anymore because you're pulling me into a world I don't want to be in. So I think that's where, and I hear Commissioner Eberlein's concerns, and Commissioner Duncan brings up good points, and I think this is something I'm open to exploring a little bit more, but it needs to be fleshed out a little better. If we're going to look at, taking away someone's livelihood, there needs to be,
Right.
Irrefutable facts of people being harmed.
And if I
Right. No, I agree with that, and I hear that all three of your concerns, and frankly, that's why we're having the discussion right now.
Yeah.
And prior to your time, Director Callahan, I recall when there was a building inspector that didn't even crawl up on the roof to see if the nails were putting us into the wood to nail and that was
Decking,
pardon, yeah,
for the decking.
yes, and so they didn't want to climb up on top of the roof, and I knew that person.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, you
Did
can.
you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, Craig Davis of Community Development. Y'all bring up some very good points. Process is huge. Back to your original question as far as, how do we affirm who we take this to? We have to, it's got to be progressive. Pat wrote it more in terms of like a burden of proof that the county would have to show, which is much better in the perspective for the contractors, not necessarily a preponderance. I mean, we have to show willful intent. We have to show progressive citations or issues for that. So it's not a one and done kind of thing. So you're given the benefit of the doubt to the most extent that you can. It's much like what we've had in our ordinance for a vexatious complainant. It's not a single isolated incident, and we have to prove that.
It's not an allegation, it's an objective standard.
Yes, and it's formal proof. So that's the difference to
Right.
the point you all bring up. Because this isn't something it's not a liberal approach to this. We want to make sure we're definitive and it's the right course of action. So that's why it's important for your input to be able to come up with.
And I can add,
process.
oh, sorry.
That's okay.
And I can add language saying that we have to prove it by clear and convincing evidence as well.
What if in addition, we had some kind of systematic process in these where they are first suspended for a period of time to be determined, and then so that no one's eligible for debarment from the very beginning, they first are suspended, and then if there's a reoccurring thing after suspension, then debarment is the option, or maybe another suspension or whatever it is, but that it would be kind of set up that way to where they first are suspended and then.
Much like progressive discipline, the issue that arises, and it's just a very, very few of the contractors that are out there. The state of Idaho does not have a jurisdictional authority that holds contractors accountable for licensure. We have a registration. Other states, you have to test, you have to go through, your license updates and make sure everything's current. And if you do come before that board, they have the jurisdictional ability to suspend you, to revoke your license and things like that. So those states do have that authority to kind of govern the contractors base. And I know some have worked in those states. Idaho just doesn't have that. So in lieu of that, like I said, we have maybe 3 out here that this would apply to out of all the contractors we've dealt with in the 6 years I've been here. So it's very limited what we have. We just want something to be out there because we get the calls where somebody's out $40,000 because somebody did a shoddy job and took off, and they've got to redo it. And we just want to make sure that.
And the environmental damage is done and can't be undone.
Yeah, and that's really difficult.
Yeah.
Well, I have another example. So I know of a person personally who was building an airplane hangar, and it was a steel structure, and he intentionally was baiting the inspector. And so the inspector looked at all of it and said it passes code. And so he proceeded then to show where he didn't even get up there and look at the bolts and where they were at. The hangar would have fallen down in the winter. He was testing, and that did happen. And that's pretty bad. So we're all humans. We all make mistakes, and sometimes we get sloppy, and so on and so forth. And that was one example, and I saw that personally with my own eyes.
Well, are we good just to kind of flesh this out more and bring it back and have another discussion?
That's fine
You
with me.
can. I just look at it as buyer beware.
Yeah, I understand.
Maybe if I could just kind of address what your comments are, Commissioner Eberlein. If that were to be the case, then we should address.
It was the case.
Then we should address that with our inspector, and there should be ramifications.
That's exactly it.
For the inspector. What we're saying is that, likewise, there should be some ramifications for a contractor that does the same thing. So if you think that there should be ramifications for staff, then there are, in our opinion.
And there are. We've let people go.
Yeah, in our opinion, there should be all those same
So after this meeting, I will divulge to you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
After this meeting, I will divulge to you.
Okay.
So there'll be an offline discussion of who inspects the inspectors
Correct.
and how that's done. But at least for this, we can, I think there's enough direction to say it's not dead in the water, but we just need to make sure it's well thought out, and we can revisit it for a discussion point.
Thank you.
And we,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
and
more
I'll
than
just bring
fair.
up, I just have one more thing to bring up as, this furthers discussion is the fact that it talks about performance record, and they must be able to demonstrate satisfactory current performance record. Well, what happens when this guy's first job as a contractor, this gal's first job? So how are they going to be able to prove a record when they're just brand new starting the business? So just the other things to think about as we move through this process.
Yeah, they're assumed to be good until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I think so.
So, okay.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. If I have to tweak the language a little to reflect that, then that's fine.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this? Hearing nothing, that concludes our business. 11:15, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Thank you.